Most men enter marriage believing they are signing a love story, when in reality, they are entering a high-stakes, legally binding business partnership where the risk exposure is fundamentally asymmetrical. For you, the man, the potential downside is catastrophic. You risk losing 50% of your accumulated wealth, decades of future earnings, access to your children, and your psychological stability. And yet, men prioritize the wedding cake flavor over conducting the necessary due diligence on their future partner's operational reality. This is not romance. This is self-sabotage. Ignore these conversations or accept vague answers, and I guarantee you will wake up years from now wondering how you lost control of your entire life. I'm talking about penetrating the performance. She minimizes her flaws, smooths out her rough edges, and presents the ideal partner you want to believe in. This performance is a natural function of mate selection. But in the modern environment, where the female risk is low and the male risk is existential, that performance is a deadly trap. This isn't a regional problem. This is a global psychological reality playing out in every major city. Tell me right now, where are you tuning in from? We are creating a global network of informed men who refuse to make this mistake. The vast majority of divorce outcomes are predetermined not by future events, but by past unaddressed issues and misaligned foundational expectations. They substitute chemistry for commitment structure. They fear the temporary discomfort of an honest conversation more than they fear the permanent wreckage of a bad marriage. The stakes are higher than ever before. Modern divorce law is designed to dismantle the man's position of power and resource allocation, making it imperative that the woman you choose possesses not just attraction, but verifiable character, financial transparency, and foundational alignment. When a woman is pursuing commitment, she is focused on acquiring stability. When a man pursues commitment, he is focused on securing loyalty, respect, and a dedicated family partnership. You must ensure her commitment to you is driven by genuine respect and admiration for you specifically, and not just the utility you represent in solving her immediate biographical crisis. We need to establish the foundation of female psychology that makes these three conversations necessary. She has spent her prime navigating the landscape, prioritizing experiences, career, and often high excitement, low commitment relationships. When she decides she is ready to settle down, this decision is rarely a random epiphany. The woman you are dating today is a composite of her historical choices. If her past is riddled with chaos, financial instability, serial short-term relationships, or a pattern of blame shifting, that history does not vanish simply because she decided to wear a beige sweater and talk about stability. It is encoded into her psychological operating system, her capacity for pair bonding, her ability to handle conflict, her financial discipline. All of these are artifacts of her past behavior. The conversations we are discussing are designed to elicit the truth about that history. They must be conducted with calm, surgical precision, not accusation. You are seeking accountability, not absolution. A woman of high character will recognize the necessity of this transparency. Her reaction to these questions is as important as her answers. Let's look at the areas where men are most consistently blindsided. A woman's relational history is the single best predictor of her future marital stability. If she has a history of high body count, she has developed what is known as comparison disease. Her brain is neurologically wired to seek variety and compare the stability you offer against the excitement and novelty of past partners. This psychological framework makes deep, intimate, long-term bonding incredibly difficult, often leading to chronic dissatisfaction, criticism, and emotional withdrawal within the marriage. You must understand the nature of her previous exits. Did she end relationships cleanly? Or did she engage in cheating, triangulation, or impulsive decisions? If her history demonstrates a low tolerance for friction and a high tendency to exit when her emotional needs are not perfectly met, she is bringing an instability bomb into your marriage. If she never had to develop those skills because she could always trade up for a new man when things got difficult, She will default to leaving when your marriage inevitably hits turbulence. Money is the #1 cause of marital stress and divorce. Marriage is a merger of two financial entities. If she brings significant consumer debt, chronic overspending habits, or a fundamental misunderstanding of wealth accumulation versus consumption, she is introducing a liability that you will legally share. Furthermore, you must vet her understanding of financial roles. Does she expect you to be the sole provider simply because you earn more without contributing to the shared savings goals? You must have a transparent, line-by-line understanding of her current and previous financial stability, including her credit history and any existing legal or financial obligations. If she resists this transparency, if she uses vague language about her student loans or past credit issues, she is waving a massive red flag. The modern relationship narrative tells women they can have it all without defining what all actually entails in the context of a family. The vast majority of marital conflict, especially post-children, revolves around who does the invisible, emotional, and physical labor of running a household and raising a family. If you plan to have children, who is responsible for the lion's share of childcare? What happens to her career versus yours? If you believe she will be a traditional, supportive wife and mother based on her current performance, but she internally believes she is entitled to maximum career focus and minimal domestic responsibility, that misalignment will become an explosive wedge the moment a child is born. You need explicit, written, and agreed-upon conversations about these roles, moving beyond vague promises of support and into the granular day-to-day realities of family management. Men often avoid these critical conversations because the cultural narrative says that asking these questions indicates a lack of trust or a lack of love. True love and mature partnership demand honesty and structural alignment. Entering marriage based on optimism alone is financial and emotional negligence. You must analyze the patterns. She will attempt to bypass these checks. She will accuse you of being judgmental or overly analytical. Recognize this for what it is, an attempt to maintain the performance and hide the structural weaknesses. If she resists, she is telling you that the performance is temporary and the underlying reality is a liability. This foundation is crucial. You must be prepared for the discomfort, because the temporary discomfort of these 3 conversations is infinitely less painful than the permanent agony of divorce. You deserve a partnership built on truth and demonstrated character, not on a temporary performance driven by biological urgency. Lock in your protection now. Hit the like button to amplify this essential knowledge. This is only the groundwork. We have established why these conversations are necessary and the psychological risks involved. This next step is the most critical information you will receive. Do not miss the critical next step. Let us see the strength of the men who are ready to negotiate marriage from a position of power, not desperation. You saw the patterns. You now know the difference between genuine transformation and biological panic, disguised as romantic desire. You understand that the woman who is suddenly ready for commitment after years of exploring other options is likely not choosing you out of overwhelming attraction, but out of necessity. You are the stable platform she requires to launch the next critical phase of her life before her biological clock strikes midnight. But recognizing the trap is only the first step. They see the red flags. They understand the risk, but they fear the conflict of speaking the truth, and they fear the loneliness of walking away. That fear is what costs men everything. We are moving past recognition now. We are moving into the actionable offense. These conversations are designed not just to gather information, but to test her capacity for radical honesty, accountability, and genuine partnership. These discussions will either solidify your future or give you the clarity required to protect yourself before you sign a life-destroying contract. This is where we define the reality of the connection. And tell me right now, which city are you tuning in from, seeking this hard truth? Understanding that you are not alone in facing these specific pressures gives you the strength to hold the line during these critical negotiations. The first conversation must be a complete, unflinching audit of her relationship history. You are not asking about her past because you are insecure. You are asking because her past relationship choices are the single strongest predictor of her future behavior and her psychological fitness for long-term pair bonding. You must understand the extent of this training. You need to ask specific, quantifiable questions that demand accountability, not excuses. You must push past the generalized narrative and demand specific, concrete lessons learned. Ask her directly, what specific choices did she make that contributed to the end of her previous 3 serious relationships? If her answer is dominated by blaming the men, blaming bad luck, or blaming external factors, if she cannot articulate her own culpability in her own past failures, you are speaking to someone who has learned nothing and is incapable of genuine self-reflection. This lack of accountability guarantees that when conflict inevitably arises in your marriage, she will revert to the blame-shifting mechanism, making resolution impossible and turning your life into a siege. You must also address the partner count and sexual history, not as a moral judgment, but as a critical factor in understanding her pair bonding capacity and her psychological barriers to genuine intimacy. You need clarity on the quantity of previous serious engagements and the emotional intensity of those connections. The research is clear. Women who have had high sexual variety often struggle to form deep monogamous attachment later. This is the comparison disease in its most painful form. If she avoids the conversation, stonewalls, or accuses you of misogyny or insecurity, the conversation is over, and so should the relationship be. She is demonstrating that she values her secrecy over your trust and well-being. A partner genuinely ready for marriage welcomes transparency because they are proud of the woman they have become. They do not hide the woman they were. If she fails this test, you are committing to a perpetual adolescent trapped in a woman's body who will blame you for her own chronic dissatisfaction. Marriage is a legal and financial partnership that requires extreme structural alignment, especially when children are involved. In this conversation, you must define the practical terms of your shared reality and expose any fantasy expectations she harbors about the provider role. You must establish a concrete, non-negotiable financial framework. If you are the man bringing stability, resources, and the majority of the income, the prenup is not optional. It is risk management. Her refusal is a direct signal that she sees the marriage as a transactional vehicle for financial security, not a partnership based on mutual trust and protection. A woman ready for genuine partnership understands that a prenup protects the marriage by removing the financial incentive for divorce. If she is in her mid to late 30s and prioritizing marriage, the clock is ticking for children, which means career paths must be defined. If you are expected to be the primary provider and she wishes to have children, who is taking the career hit? What are your fundamental, non-negotiable beliefs about education, faith, and the geographical location of your life? Men often make the mistake of assuming alignment because they are currently happy. If she expects you to maintain a high-stress, high-income career while simultaneously maintaining an equal share of household and childcare duties, her expectations are delusional and fueled by entitlement. She must articulate clearly what she is willing to give up, not just what she expects to gain, for the marriage structure to succeed. If she insists she can have it all, without clearly defining the logistical and financial resources required to achieve that, she is living in a fantasy that will bankrupt your time and your sanity. This is the hardest conversation and the definitive closer. If she has a history that suggests she is settling for you, the stable, reliable man, after chasing the exciting, non-committal, high-value types in her youth, the risk of future resentment is not an assumption, it is a certainty. Resentment is the silent killer of marriages, especially those founded on strategic necessity rather than genuine, overwhelming desire. You must talk openly about what happens when the honeymoon phase ends, when the biological urge is satisfied, and she wakes up next to you 5 years later, remembering the excitement of her past. Ask her, when you feel dissatisfied, when you compare our stable life to the idealized excitement you remember, how will you manage that feeling without projecting it onto me? This is a test of her emotional maturity and her commitment to the reality she chose. If she is an accountable adult, she will recognize that emotions fluctuate and dissatisfaction is inevitable. She must articulate a strategy for managing her internal state without defaulting to the destructive patterns of women who settle: contempt, criticism, withholding intimacy, and threatening divorce. You must make it clear, long before the legal commitment, that divorce is not a tool for conflict resolution, nor is it a threat to gain compliance. Tell her precisely, in this marriage, when conflict gets difficult, you are not allowed to threaten divorce. Our commitment is permanent. If you threaten divorce, the marriage is effectively over, and I will treat it as such. If she argues that she should be allowed to leave whenever she is unhappy, or if she treats the conversation lightly, she has not psychologically committed to the concept of permanent partnership. She is committing to a trial period with an optional exit strategy, which means you bear all the risk. If you walk into marriage without the historical audit, you commit to someone whose psychological framework is trained for instability and comparison. If you skip the financial merger, you sign away your resources and submit to an entitlement-based financial structure. This is why men lose everything. They trade clarity for comfort, silence for temporary peace, and their future security for the immediate validation of feeling chosen. You were secured, and the difference between those two motivations will emerge in high-definition clarity after the marriage certificate is signed and her biological and social necessities are met. The criticism starts subtly. The intimacy fades to duty. You become the obstacle standing between her and the fantasy she sacrificed for stability. She doesn't hate you. She hates that she had to settle for stability, and you are the physical manifestation of that settled reality. The reality is stark. You must recognize that the modern marriage market, especially for men in their 30s and 40s, is a market of asymmetrical risk. Your only defense is radical honesty, objective risk assessment, and the courage to walk away if these conversations reveal the fundamental disconnect. Your peace is not worth the price of emotional dishonesty. You are a man who deserves genuine desire, authentic respect, and a partner whose commitment is driven by a profound choice of you, not a calculated choice of security. Do not settle for being the solution to someone else's problem. We are establishing a baseline of objective reality for men navigating these critical decisions. You have absorbed dense information designed to protect your future. I want you to comment below with a single powerful phrase that summarizes the protection gained from this discussion. Something simple, direct, and non-negotiable that others can use as an immediate mental trigger. Type "I demand clarity," or "accountability first," or perhaps "no more settlement." This simple action reinforces the lesson and builds a shield for every man reading. You recognize the power of this pattern recognition, and you know its value in guarding against catastrophe. We are a community built on shared reality, and your positive engagement strengthens the signal for men who desperately need this clarity. And finally, understand this: the protection of the truth never ends. Stay locked in for the ultimate defense strategy against the highest risk marriages in the modern era. You cannot afford to miss the next layer of truth.